If you're on a highway, you're gonna go speed. Just look aside or you might end up in a heap.
If you grew up watching The Roadrunner on Saturday mornings, chances are you never actually saw the original cartoons. You remember the anvils, the boulders, Wile E. Coyote falling off every cliff and somehow surviving every single time. But the cartoons we all remember aren't exactly the ones Chuck Jones created. Somewhere between the animation studio and our living room TVs, pieces of those shorts quietly disappeared. Today, we're going back to the originals to find out what changed and why millions of us never even noticed. Fantasy, sci-fi, nostalgia, Rerun Zone. When you were a kid, waking up on Saturday morning meant you had a routine. You got up early, poured yourself a bowl of cereal, turned on the TV, and waited for the cartoons to start. Roadrunner was always somewhere in that lineup. Sooner or later, that little bird would come racing across the screen, leaving Wile E. Coyote in another cloud of dust. We watched those same cartoons over and over again. The same boulders, the same tunnels, the same crazy Acme inventions. And every time we assumed we were watching the complete cartoon, exactly the way Chuck Jones intended. There weren't any VHS tapes, DVD collections, or YouTube videos to compare them to. Whatever aired was the cartoon we saw. There was no original version nearby to show us what we might be missing. The truth is, those cartoons had already started to change long before they reached our living room televisions. Whatever aired was the cartoon we remembered, until we finally got to see the difference. Now, before Roadrunner ever showed up on Saturday morning TV, he lived in the movie theaters. That's right, the original classic cartoons weren't made for television. They were made to play before a movie started, back when going to the movies meant getting an entire night of entertainment. A newsreel, a cartoon, a short subject. Then the main feature. That's the audience Chuck Jones had in mind, someone sitting in a dark theater looking for a few minutes of laughter before the movie started. Jones directed the cartoons while writer Michael Maltese crafted many of the unforgettable chases, the setups, the payoffs, and the perfectly timed gags that made the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote different from any other cartoon characters. These cartoons were special. They were built like a piece of music. Every pause, every glance, every explosion, every fall happened at exactly the right moment. Nothing was filler. Every shot had a purpose. That's what audiences saw in theaters. 7 minutes of cartoon humor, exactly as created. No commercial breaks, no network standards, no television execs deciding what stayed and what didn't. Just a complete uncensored cartoon. And somewhere along the way, though, that started to change. Not all at once, but little by little. On the TV screen, scenes began disappearing. Jokes got shortened, and moments got trimmed to fit a schedule no theater ever had to worry about. Before too long, the version most of us grew up watching wasn't the same one that appeared in theaters. So what happened? And why did almost no one notice? Now let's look at a few examples of what actually disappeared. First, there's Zipping Along from 1953. In the original theatrical version, Wile E. Coyote lines up an entire row of rifles. Of course, everything goes wrong, and instead of catching the Roadrunner, Wile E. takes the full blast himself. If you grew up watching syndicated broadcasts or network airings, there's a good chance you never saw that part. The cartoon just jumps ahead, like that moment never happened. In There They Go 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 from 1956, Wile E. stuffs a spring-loaded gun into a hole in the ground, aiming it at the Roadrunner. The trap is set, but the spring is too strong. The gun flips around and points upside down straight at his face. He tries plugging the barrel with his finger. We all know what happens next, except we didn't see it back then. In some television versions, that entire sequence quietly disappeared. The setup, the backfire, the punchline, all gone. It wasn't just the explosions either. The original theatrical title cards sometimes had little visual jokes of their own. TV versions would sometimes remove them completely. That meant the cartoon didn't just start differently, it lost part of its personality. There were also the moments between the big laughs. The split second when Wile E. realizes he's run off the edge of a cliff. The slow glance toward the audience. The pause before gravity finally takes over. Those little moments may not seem important, but Chuck Jones' new comedy wasn't just the punchline, it's also the timing. None of these edits came with a warning or announcement saying, "This cartoon has been edited for television." The cartoon just continued, as though nothing was missing. And because the Roadrunner cartoons already moved at such a fast pace, no one really noticed. Our memories became memories of the television versions, not the originals. So why would anyone edit a Roadrunner cartoon, or any cartoon in the first place? Well, 3 different things happened almost at the same time. The first was television itself. By the late 1960s, every major network had a standards and practices department that would watch a program before it aired, and someone had to decide whether it met the network's guidelines for a television audience, especially for children. Chuck Jones and Warner Brothers had created these cartoons for theatrical audiences. On television, they had to pass through censors first. The second thing was a shift in attitude. During the late 1960s and early 1970s, many parents, educators, and advocacy groups began questioning how much violence children were seeing on television. Even slapstick cartoon violence, a comedy tradition for decades, started getting closer scrutiny. Organizations like Action for Children's Television pushed broadcasters to reconsider what they were showing on Saturday mornings, and the networks responded by tightening their standards. The Roadrunner cartoons weren't the only ones, though. Tom and Jerry, Popeye, and plenty of others were no stranger to the censor's scissors. Nobody really believed Wile E. Coyote was teaching kids to build Acme rockets or drop anvils on each other's heads, but certain groups argued that it normalized violence. Exploding rifles, oversized cannons, dynamite, and elaborate booby traps looked different through the eyes of television executives and advertisers than they had to movie audiences 20 years before. Not everyone agreed with their thinking, though. Many people argued there was little to no evidence that cartoon slapstick led to real-world violence. But whether they agreed or not, the edits continued. Then there was a third and simpler reason. Television runs on a time clock, and movie theaters don't. A theatrical cartoon could take exactly as long as it needed. But every half-hour television program had to fit neatly between commercial breaks, station announcements, and the next show on the schedule. The story doesn't end here, with pieces of these cartoons quietly disappearing. Eventually, they started coming back. I can't show you a side-by-side comparison because, ironically, the original theatrical cartoons have now been restored. For years, the television versions were the only ones most people ever saw. If you wanted to watch a Roadrunner cartoon, you watched whatever version happened to be on. That was the way it was. Then, in the early 1990s, Cartoon Network gave the classic Looney Tunes shorts a new home. Many appeared closer to their original theatrical form than the versions that had aired for years on Saturday morning television. Then came home video. Warner Brothers' Looney Tunes Golden Collection finally gave fans access to beautifully restored versions of the original theatrical cartoons. Not edited, not shortened, not squeezed into a television schedule. Just the complete cartoons, exactly as audiences had seen them in theaters decades earlier. As restoration technology improved, the releases got better. Blu-ray collections revealed details hidden for years. Warner Archive kept restoring more shorts from original film elements, and streaming eventually put many of those restorations in front of an entirely new generation. Think about that. For decades, the original Roadrunner cartoons were something most people only heard about but couldn't see. Today, they're just a few clicks away. Now anyone can see the theatrical versions that Chuck Jones originally created as they were meant to be seen. So, do I feel cheated because I grew up watching edited Roadrunner cartoons? Not really. I still love them. I still laughed every time Wile E. Coyote's latest Acme invention blew up in his face. Wile E. Coyote was history's most persistent customer of the craziest mail-order catalog that was ever printed. I still have great memories of sitting in front of the TV on Saturday mornings watching them. The difference is, we can finally go back and see what we missed. The extra few seconds, the missing gags, the little moments Chuck Jones put in that television took out. I actually appreciate those cartoons even more now. They're still the same Roadrunner cartoons I remember. There's just a little more of them than I ever knew existed. So if you grew up watching Roadrunner like I did, I'd love to know your memories of those cartoons below. This is Rich from Rerun Zone. Thanks for watching, and have a good night.